One of the most prevalent technologies is MyFair. MyFair is just a brand name of an open architecture smart card technology. It was developed by a company called NXP, and it's definitely the most widely implemented. However, it still has certain security gaps. It depends on the exact application you're using, but MyFair Classic, as they call it, is an older smart card technology and had certain limitations. In 2002, HID came out with their iClass. It is their proprietary smart card replacing their proprietary Prox card. You know, they've already kind of had this monopoly on the Prox organization. Now they want to be able to take those existing customers and move them into their smart card platform. The two lead design engineers of iClass were actually two of the four original founders of Exceed ID. Exceed ID is the original company that the Schlage reader and credential line is built off of. You may end up seeing both of them out in the field. From a technical standpoint, they're the same. You know, it's just different branding. MyFair DesFire was an attempt from NXP to solve some of the gaps that they saw with MyFair. The issue there, it never really took off in North America. Typically speaking, it didn't have enough advantages to accommodate the increase in price. You know, the industry just didn't see enough of a reason to move away from the technology they've already standardized on, or didn't see enough benefit to pay the extra per card price. Since in the early days, smart cards were positioned much higher than Prox cards from a pricing standpoint. In 2005, prior to the acquisition, Exceed ID came out with what we call high security MyFair. Basically what that is we take the base technology of MyFair, which is widely accepted and plenty of people are able to write and interoperate with that. But we identified certain security gaps, such as diversified keys and encryption and message authentication codes. These are different security measures that make that communication between the card and reader more secure. That makes the Schlage solution more secure than any other MyFair currently on the market. In 2006, the government came out with our PIV standard. It's been in the implementation process now for 4 years. We still have another year left on it until it's supposed to be fully implemented. Schlage does not sell PIV or FIPS capable smart cards. You only obtain those through the government. So if you guys are working with an entity that's looking for a TWIC card at a port authority, well, they have to go through the TWIC authority to get that. It's not something that we supply, it's not something that HID supplies. We do, however, sell a full line of PIV certified readers, so we can read their smart cards. We just don't supply them. That being said, there are a lot of installations that not everybody needs to utilize a PIV card. PIV cards are very expensive because of the authentication and enrollment process. Typically speaking, they're in between $150 to $250 a person. That being said, if you have contractors on site, visitors, things like that, they're obviously not going to be warranted that very expensive PIV card. So we could still use something like the Schlage High Security MyFair card, which you'll still get the extra security of a smart card, but you then remove the extra $247 worth of cost. So definitely a way to be able to kind of mix and match the types of credentials, because the readers themselves can read multiple different credentials all at once. In 2006, MyFair DesFire EV1 was introduced by NXP, the same company that came out with MyFair DesFire and MyFair. Schlage offers, in our Aptique family of smart cards, we offer both high security MyFair as well as DesFire EV1. DesFire EV1 has higher encryption rates, up to double the memory capabilities of MyFair. However, for your standard access control installations, you may not necessarily need that additional capability, so we also still have the MyFair platform, which is very, very capable and flexible. One of the main differences is the overall approach that Ingersoll Rand takes. We try to be as open architecture as possible, and that's kind of a buzzword these days in our industry, but we really do that from both a card standpoint as well as a reader standpoint. And in the smart card world, what we mean by open architecture is how we function with other people outside of ourselves and other applications. You know, as you'll see, there's really two different areas for some type of identification information and access control. There's the card serial number, which is a static, unique, non-sequential number programmed at the time the chip's manufactured. We don't know what that is until you actually use an enrollment reader and read it into some type of system. There's no way to predict it. You can't get 100 in a row. It's not like the user definable information that we put in Sector 1. That's where your customer says, I want 26-bit facility code 50 and badge number 110. Sector 1 is where we store that information. That Sector 1 is only going to be authenticated to a reader that shares the same common security key. You know, as we were talking, when the card and reader come within the energy field, they have to exchange information to make sure it's allowed to release the information in there. If you show that to a reader that doesn't share that key, you're not going to gain access to the information. We'll talk about that in a compatibility standpoint. But the open architecture comes in the rest of the card, and this is just a 5-sector card for demonstration purposes. But we leave all of the extra room for the card open for any additional application that you want to use. Now the main difference there is then you're not limited to using anybody that we have set up a specific partnership with. Now if you want to do something, we can help make some suggestions, but at the end of the day, you can go to any third-party application out there that's written an application for MyFair. You don't need to go to somebody that we suggest or that we've worked with. You know, it really is an open technology. On the other side, when you hear proprietary, what do you typically think?
You're stuck with that vendor forever.
Yeah, you're locked in. You know, I mean, you got to do what they tell you to do. If they say price increase, you say how much. You know, there's really not much of another choice. With our competitor being based on proprietary technology, not only have they locked down Sector 1, I mean, obviously they want to, you know, maintain the integrity of your facility, so they're going to lock that down. They lock down the entire rest of the smart card and say, if you want to play on my card, you're going to have to come pay the toll. So you're typically going to have fewer choices and higher costs when you look at doing some of those extra applications. And you know, from an end user standpoint, you're really more limited in how you can utilize that card. If you think of it as a jump drive, that's like, you know, going to Office Max, buying a jump drive, plugging it in, going to store something, and a little something comes up, say, you know, please enter credit card number, give me 10 cents. You know, as opposed to just getting the open media and being able to use it however you want. I mean, we give you guys the ability. I don't see as a manufacturer why it's my job to tell you what you can and can't do with it. To kind of recap in between the differences that Jen were talking about and that I was, from the transaction time, you're at 100 times the speed. So we're able to make that transaction transparent to the end user, even though we're doing, you know, triple DES encryption, making sure that the card and reader communication is completely secured. We do it so fast that the end user, as you're presenting your card, you don't see any difference. So you don't see a loss of speed in the transaction time to gain the extra security. As far as the data storage go, the data storage and the multiple applications really go together. You know, that's what we're leveraging, is that ability to store the cards for more purposes. The secure transactions, this is really, to me, the most important part. If you're not going to do logical access or cashless vending, whatever it is, this is a more secure physical access credential. That's really what this boils down to. If all you're doing is access control in your building, you can get a high security smart card for a lower cost than a 20-year-old Prox technology. That's, I mean, if you take away one thing and you're thinking only from an access control standpoint, more secure, less expensive. And then you can do all this other stuff with it. That's kind of, you know, in our industry we sometimes overcomplicate things as far as, you know, what you can do with it, because they are very, very powerful tools. But when it boils down to it, we're all here for physical security. We want to make people's buildings more secure to protect them, the building, and the assets inside of it. And that's what we're doing with smart cards. And we're providing it at a better value. just again, kind of cross-reference the Prox and Smart a little bit. Obviously, we have additional capabilities on the Smart side. From the physical format side, we're able to provide you pretty much the same thing in both Prox cards, which are HID 125 kilohertz compatible, as well as Smart cards in a couple of different Smart card technologies. We've always had the clamshell, the ISO printable, you know, so people actually print their ID badges on there. PVC patches in case people want to stick it onto their cell phone, or they just already have a magstripe card and they want to add contactless technology to it. One of the new ones this year is the I button. You know, has anybody worked with our older electromechanical locks that utilize the I button as the credential? Yeah, some of you guys have. Well, the I button is not incorporated into our new 8D lock platform. However, we didn't want to you know, maroon everybody on an I button island and not be able to utilize their old hardware with the new technology. So instead of incorporating it into the lock, we incorporated the new technology into the I button. So now this is a multi-technology I button that has either Prox or Smart, and then the I button in it as well. So that you're still able to use this with your old hardware and then use the contactless portion with the new hardware. The reason we have other facility or other card formats is we can guarantee unique facility codes to a specific end user or to a specific dealer, so that, you know, if you're using a 35-bit facility code 110, I'm only going to make that for one person.
So that's comparable like Corporate 1000 HID?
Exactly. Card Trax is our comparable program to Corporate 1000. A couple of major differences. One, we offer it both to dealers and end users, so it's not just end user specific. We don't charge per card for it, so you still get the benefit. You know, I mean, has anybody ordered duplicate cards on accident? Or, you know, your end user gave you the wrong card range because they just looked at an old sales order, but then somebody else had ordered something previously? Well, all those problems can be eliminated with Card Trax, because basically we give you an account number, and once that account is set up, when you place a purchase order, you give us the account number, the part number, so what, you know, physical form do you want, and then the quantity. That way we do the tracking and managing. All the responsibility is off of the end user and the dealer. So we basically step up to the plate and say, listen, we'll do this for free. If it makes doing business easier and eliminates the headaches of possibly, you know, ordering mistakes and duplicate cards, you know, that's just something we're willing to do to make the process a little bit smoother. We offer this for both Prox and Smart. Even in 26-bit, if you guys do have large 26-bit implementations, we can assign a Card Trax account for 26-bit. On that, there are two major stipulations. One, we have a minimum order of 2,000 cards a year for 26-bit, because obviously there's so many 26-bit installations, you know, it would be too cumbersome to track every single one. And two, we obviously cannot guarantee that that card's not going to be duplicated. We'll just simply assign you a Card Trax so that we take away the hassle of, you know, ordering and tracking, but we obviously can make the same card for somebody else that we make for you on 26-bit. But so definitely something to look at. Free program available. You know, you can place your orders with Access Hardware. You can actually put them as the designated purchasing entity, so that if we get an order from somebody else on the other side of the country, we're going to go ahead and question that. Was it a mistake, or B, is somebody trying to do something, you know, illegitimate that they're not supposed to be doing? For those of you that don't want to go the Card Trax route, you know, we did go ahead and put together an easy order form. This, you'll actually be able to see readers and credentials on this. You know, hopefully we'll have fewer processing mistakes, you know, for the entire route. It makes it a little bit easier. It gives you a direct cross-reference. The cross-reference that we had up on that one of the first few slides, it shows you direct cross-reference to the HID compatible product on the Prox stuff, and just makes, you know, an easy hard copy. If for some reason something did go wrong, you can pull out your easy order form and say, oh, I did accidentally put, you know, 110 instead of 101. That's where the issue was. The multi-technology reader is really what Exceed ID was known for. That's, you know, what we eventually ended up getting acquired for. In 2004, we won the Frost & Sullivan, I forget the actual terminology, it was like the new access control product of the year. In the Prox world, you know, we read the HID, GE CASI, AWID, Linnell Prox, if you guys see any of that, and then the Schlage Exceed ID Prox cards. At the same time, without any type of different configuration or simultaneously at one installation, you can have people using Prox cards and smart cards. We read the new Schlage Aptiv smart card, our high security MyFair, the government credentials. Obviously that's a big one here. You've got your port authorities, you've got multiple different DoD sites. All these different institutions, if they haven't already switched over, need to by the end of 2011. Actually, September of 2011, they need to switch over to the PIV credentials. But this is really the bread and butter of what we do. We help migrate people from the more expensive proprietary Prox card into a less expensive, high security, open architecture smart card. So we're taking somebody that's paying, $5 for a Prox card, now we can get them for, $4 for a smart card, which is actually giving them more security at a better value. But so the multi-technology is really kind of the sweet spot, solves all of your problems, whether it's from a SKU point of view, carrying them on your truck. You've got one reader you can pull off, use at multiple different sites. You can use it to help transition people to smart cards, save them money and add security, and then you can use them for those multi-tenant facilities. Well, sometimes we need a little bit of cost savings. We need the most economic product that we can, especially in this economic climate. Bid scenarios are getting that much tougher. There's more people going out for them. We have a single technology product line. This is the Prox only product line. We're still reading multiple different Prox cards. So we're still being able to read multiple different cards, more than the HID 5395, for example, like our 1500 here. However, we're still saving you about 10% list over the multi-technology product. And it's really just to shave off a little bit to be very competitive for your bid scenarios. If you're just doing some tenant build out, they know they're only going to be there for 2 years. They're not moving to smart cards. They just want a couple more Prox readers. Great product to add in. On the complete flip side of that, we have the smart only readers. This is really what we focus for your new installations. Anybody putting in a new system, doesn't have to be new construction, but just a new system. There's no reason to start with a 20-year-old Prox technology. It's already kind of hit the pinnacle of its usefulness. There's no additional capabilities that you can add to that Prox card to make it better. The price continues to go up as they become more and more obsolete. I mean, look at the price of a GE Prox card over the past 10 years. All it's done is just skyrocket. As the installations go down, the price goes up. It's a proprietary card. They know that you either have to buy their card or you got to rip it off and put on something new. So in the smart only world, again, we can save you money on the single technology reader. We also eliminate any vulnerabilities that we were talking about earlier of Prox getting into your system. Because if you don't have to read it because people have the cards, you don't want that in your system. And then obviously from the card standpoint, we're able to provide you a cost savings per credential, which has a very quick ROI. I mean, if you're saving somebody $1 a card, that adds up. That's real money. They can see that. A couple of orders of cards all of a sudden just paid for their replacement readers. To really kind of sum things up on the reader side, why would you end up choosing a Schlage reader over the competition? We've obviously got a couple of things up here, but over the past 20 minutes, anything that sticks out in your mind on why you would end up using Schlage over your standard HID Prox reader?
The flexibility.
Flexibility? Okay. Anything else? Support? I mean, you have the same support that you guys are used to getting from the SSC and from our distributors like AHS on all of our smart cards, Prox cards, and readers. As you know, Ingersoll Rand looks at it as an entire solution. It's not just how many white cards can I sell. It's what kind of a solution can we provide to you so that you can then sell more value to the customer. That's what it really comes down to. Did want to touch real quick on the compatibility. We talked a lot about kind of us versus them type thing. Well, really, it doesn't have to be that cut and dry. If you have an existing HID 125 kilohertz Prox facility, you have the capability of utilizing our cards and our readers mixed in with their cards and their readers. So you said, okay, well, I didn't know Schlage had Prox only readers up until now. I've got this customer, they're doing a tenant build out, they need 3 more readers. Great, you can go ahead and add the Schlage Prox reader on there. It's going to function with all of their existing cards, and then you could even start doing a cost savings on the card side with using the Schlage Prox cards. Typically speaking, we're positioned 10 to 15% less on the Prox cards. It's a like-for-like replacement. Give us whatever facility code and badge ID you're doing. We can even do samples for you if you need it. I know a lot of the times people want to, touch, feel, and taste, make sure. Even though we tell you it's going to open the door, they want to make sure it opens the door. So give those requests to your access reps, and they'll get them into us so we can get them made for you. But the Wiegand data coming out the back is going to be the same. That's one of the main things to keep in mind from a retrofit or replacement standpoint. The coloring on the pigtail is the same. We have more wires actually on our pigtail for some future capabilities we're building in. But as far as hooking up your communication, your power, LED, whatever you end up doing on your standard install, it's going to be the same coloring whether you're using HID or R. So from a tech standpoint, you don't need to learn a new product. It's still going to be your standard Wiegand communication back to the panel, just as 95% of the access control market is. On smart cards, it is a little bit different story. As you see, we're still having Wiegand data communication back to the panel. So that's why the panel doesn't actually see a difference in between a smart card and a Prox card. It just sees a bunch of ones and zeros. The main difference is on the outside. In the previous slide, you just see the Prox card spitting its message out one way. As Jen said, now we have a two-way communication in between the card and reader, actually having that digital handshake, making sure that the card and reader have authenticated each other before it releases any information. So they make sure that they're not just providing the info out to anyone. With a Prox card, it's like walking through the parking lot. I can see the license plate on every one of your cars. I have to know how to be able to use that information, but the information is readily available. With the smart card, we're protecting that information and not just putting it out there for everyone to see. With that being said, we have our proprietary security keys to maintain the security of that card. We are going to read those keys on our Schlage readers, or if it is an Exceed ID reader, it's going to work on that as well, depending on what the branding was, if it's something already out there in the field. And iClass is going to work with their readers. We are, however, not going to share those keys with each other, as you can imagine. So when you try using our smart cards on an HID iClass reader, or excuse me, on a multi-class reader, they will be able to read the card serial number. So there is still a way to at least identify that person within the system. Similarly with iClass, we can identify somebody using their card serial number. An important note is that the card serial number, one, is not mutually authenticated. It's basically just, okay, here's my number, end of story. But it is, since it is a random non-sequential number, you can't just get a spreadsheet and download them into your system. You have to actually use an enrollment reader to read that data into the field. So just something to keep in mind, if you're thinking about using the card serial number as an identifier, you can't, it's not the same as the hot stamp that's printed on a card. You are going to have to present that either to a live reader to read it in, or just a little desktop USB reader to read it in. And then, as I said, the system doesn't see the difference in between the Prox and Smart. All of the Smart card is going on out here. So if somebody says, I've got a 12-year-old, Northern system, I can't do Smart cards. Wrong. As long as you accept Wiegand interface, you can do Smart cards. All it is just the reader and the card that need to be changed. The panel doesn't need to change at all. It can stay just there, and then you upgrade the entire security of your facility just by swapping out the readers and cards. Then again, the hot stamp and the card serial number are different. And then, the facility, or not facility code, the card format is something that some older systems may have limitations. There are certain panels out there that can only accept one, or there are panels that have a certain limitation on 64 bits or 48 bits. So that's really the only thing that we need to make sure we can match up. Is the reader's fine, but when you're ordering the cards, make sure we order a card format that's capable of being supported by the actual system itself. As far as asking the right questions, this really focuses both for the end users and the dealers. When we're talking about new solutions, it's really best to take an entire system inventory and really know what you're working with. Because as systems get more and more complex, as you were talking about the integration of the different systems, it's really important to think about that up front instead of when you're out there trying to hang devices on the wall. It's important that we try to think, okay, how is this device going to talk to the panel? How is the card going to talk to the reader? Making sure that we have a solution that works right. So these are really just a couple of questions that, I mean, typically when I go in and start working with an end user, that I really try to get an idea of the entire, scenario instead of just, okay, well, here's my card and reader, buying. One is what access control OEM are they running? Is it a Schlage SMS system? Is it, an old GE CASI system? Is it Linnell? One of the reasons for this being, a system like GE CASI or AMAG may end up having a different communication protocol than Wiegand. The majority of the market runs on Wiegand. Some of the old GE stuff runs on F2F. You've got 20 milliamp if you're using AMAG. So there are certain communication technologies that we need to be aware of. There's either converters available for these or ways around it, but it's just something you want to know before you order 100 readers and go try to install them and all of a sudden, your wiring's not compatible. Is the OEM an AD business partner? As Igor talks more about the AD lock here in a minute, there are certain functions and capabilities that not every access control OEM has integrated to. So if you're going in selling on the ability that you can have, 16 locks connected up to a wireless PIM, but they're using, some older antiquated access control system that hasn't integrated to that, well, now you're going to have to go in there and explain that instead of using the RS485 PIM, you've got to come back and utilize the two-door PIM. So it's just making sure that when you're proposing a solution or as an end user when you're designing your system, that you're making sure everything is compatible. Are there existing electronic devices out there from IR? Is there something using an I button? Do we need to think about that when we're looking at the credential technology, or is it only Prox out there? And then what other electronic devices are going to be in use? Does the system support video? Are there other electronic locks out there from somebody else? Is there some standalone stuff? So really just making sure that you get an accurate view of the entire system before you start moving forward. Then when we start looking at the cards and readers, and this is what our team does every day, is really helping align the proper reader and credential for the right solution. Many of the old Prox technologies are all proprietary. We're in a unique position that we do sell 125 kilohertz HID compatible credentials. However, most of the other stuff out there we do not. If you guys are familiar with Carry or Cantech, AWID, we'll read an AWID card, but we don't manufacture them. iClass, obviously proprietary technology we don't read. So just making sure that when you are looking at the systems, the limitations on the card technologies itself being used.